Welcome to a new video on my channel, and the reason I'm making this video because recently I purchased this Insta360. Well, this is particularly an X3 model, which is not the latest model because the X4 just came out. But actually, by the time I bought this one, the X4 already came out, and I choose to buy this because I thought for the things that I'm going to use this for and how many times I'm going to use this for, I don't really need the X4 and I don't want to pay the extra price, and probably for the same reason this got a little bit discounted. And again, I want to talk about this camera, how I use it to create footage mostly from trains, and also the reason I wanted to do this video because I think I'm going to include some of these footages in my YouTube videos for the next couple of weeks, and some of these are going to be these special 360 videos, and I want to upload some of these videos unedited. So YouTube has the support for 360 videos, so you can look at these videos by using your mouse and you can just pan around. You don't necessarily have to look at the direction where the camera is facing. You can just look around, and since these videos are taken in the Hungarian Railway Museum, obviously there are trains around, there's people around, there's a lot of stuff around, so maybe you want to look at the track, but in other cases you just want to look at some of the rolling stocks or the locos or some of the exhibits that we are passing by. So I think it's going to be quite fun to look at these 360 videos. So I might have a few of them that I edited, but I definitely want to upload these 360 videos as well. And you will notice them because YouTube puts a different icon there, and as soon as the video starts playing, you can just use your mouse and then move around, zoom in, zoom out. So it's a different sort of like experience, a different feeling, and different video quality, but I think it's fun, and I quite like it. But I don't really use this for this 360 view. I have to tell you that the main reason I'm using this because I'm able to create recordings that I don't think otherwise I would be able to create with a normal camera, because with this one, especially with the stick that I purchased, I can just extend this stick, and what I usually do is, well, I've created a lot of footage now, especially in the 7.25 inch gauge, is that I want to have recordings from sort of like the engine perspective, so maybe like 10-20 centimeters down from the ground, which you can do if you start kneeling down and then put maybe your phone in a small iPod, and you can create a footage where the train passes by, but you definitely cannot follow the trains, especially if the trains are getting a little bit faster. Then you have to pan your camera to follow, let's say, the engine or something else. In the steam locomotives, I also want to see the gearing and how the roads are moving. You really have to sort of like focus on this area, and of course you can do this while you're standing and sort of here looking down, but you cannot really do that sort of like natural angle how you would be able to record a full-size engine. So for that reason I think it's really nice, because you can just hold it like down there where the roads are, where the bogies are, or sort of like the driver view, and it will give you footage that you otherwise won't be able to create. So for that reason I think this is very useful for this, let's say, 7.25 inch gauge. I will also show you some footage where I stopped by a narrow gauge railway station, and I was able to create some really nice footage of the train which was waiting to be departed. So and you would be able to create a similar type of footages for normal standard gauge trains. Again, the fact that you can have this boom and come sort of like create a swooping video where you start from the button really close to the rails and you start raising this boom, and you can extend it sort of like 3 meters up in the air. You can go from a low angle to sort of like a higher angle, which again would be really difficult to do with a regular camera, or even with a phone with a selfie stick. And of course, because this records in 360, the only thing I have to worry about is where the camera is, because I can fix the framing in post-production, because it records 360. Then you can just, And then because it records in 360, in editing I can just adjust the framing. I want to look there, and then as the maybe the train passes, I start panning to the front or pan to the left, or I can do whatever I want. The only thing I can't do is I cannot change the camera location. So if I want, this shot would be better if the camera would be lower. Well, the camera was already where it was, so I can't change that. But pretty much everything I can change, and that's really nice. And of course, because sometimes I create videos here for YouTube, which is obviously landscape, but I also create a lot of footage for, let's say, Instagram and TikTok as well, which is portrait. Well, this is going to do the same in one shot. So I usually do my editing, and sometimes I go back to the same footage and then change the aspect ratio. Maybe I have to just reframe some of the parts of the shots, but I can just export the same recordings, and now it's in 9:16. And again, I go back and I can export a version which is 16:9. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that a little bit later in this video as well. So that's why I'm creating this. So you understand why I'm recording some of this footage later on into YouTube. And if you follow me on Instagram or in TikTok, then probably you have already seen some of these footages, but definitely you're going to see them, coming up in the future, because I create all these recordings and I just start to upload them every once in a while when I just remind myself that I have a lot of footage and I need to upload some of them to social media. So I'm going to do a quick view of the mobile app as well, and some of the editings I do, but then I think I'm going to switch to the desktop application because it's just much better on the screen, so you can see the details a little bit better. So what I have is the camera is turned on, and if I start the application, then it is able to connect to the camera. So if I do albums and connect, oops, not this one, connect, and it's connecting to the camera. So it's setting up a Wi-Fi network between the camera and the phone, and it can transfer recordings. So I don't have to sync the recordings up to the cloud or anything like that. And what I end up doing usually is, let's say, if I can do all this editing in traveling. So if I'm going somewhere, I do the shots, and if I do, train or public transport, then I can just turn this on. It can be in my jacket or in my lap. I take my phone out and I do the editing here. So there are a lot of different features here, and but what you mainly have in the album, you can see all the recordings that have been taken from the camera, and it is really hard to tell what recording is which, because obviously the default view is only shows the sort of like the front facing camera, but I don't necessarily hold the camera that way. So sometimes I'm just having all these shots which looks like I'm in the forest, and I can't really tell where it is what I'm really looking. So when you start going to any of the recordings, then you can see that this is already edited. I can tell because it has all these dots here in the timeline. So these are the different time frames that you can put on your video, and in each of the time frame, sorry, not time frame, keyframe, you specify your, where your camera is looking at, where the focus, what view you want to use, and that's what I do. So if I go to editing and I say reset all the edits, so this is sort of like the raw footage. You can see as I was sort of like positioning the camera. So obviously I have it in the stick and I press on record, then I sort of like extend the camera out, I lower it, and that's where the actual footage starts. So I can use the trim to trim the beginning section where I don't need, so it's already trimmed, and I can put in like a keyframe here, and I can say, okay, I want to zoom it that much, I want this ultra wide mode, or I can also use this D-wrap, which is going to remove all these fisheye effect from the video. And let's say I want to keep track of the locomotive here. So I start the recording, and obviously as the locomotive gets closer, I create another keyframe and I just move the camera around. And then maybe I want to do that again. So it looks like a tedious work, but actually it goes really fast. You have to spend some time editing, but maybe I move a little bit more. But I think it's not, you know, difficult at all. And of course you see a very low resolution footage right now, because it does all the you know, all this editing from the 360 footage to this 16:9 footage on the fly. And I do like the fact that it's the image quality is not really good, but it is very responsive and it's very easy to edit. So maybe I track a little bit more. You see, I just change once in a while where I feel that the either my, let's say in this case, the speed of the loco changes or my direction. And I think this is the point where the loco was going faster than I could walk. So maybe I would use this opportunity to start panning all the way back. So here I do this. And here I start looking ahead. And then maybe, oops, I did forget to add the keyframe. And leave it like that and let the train run out of the view. Okay, and if I go back and I look at the footage now, of course, as I said, it's not really a good quality and resolution, but you can really see what you are doing and frame the recording perfectly, make sure that nothing is clipped and you are recording what you need. So that's it. And at the end, you just click on export and it starts exporting it. And I'm not going to wait for that because it takes a little bit of time. Even we are talking about a couple of seconds of footage, but then it, yeah, you can see the timer started. But that's how easy it is to edit. And of course, you have some additional features like here you can, you know, add different movements. I don't really use these. I mean, you know, I'm not doing these type of action stuff, but if you want to do like a 360 or a pan left to right, you can easily add these. You can do this with keyframes as well, but if there is a specific movement that you want to have from these selections, that you can do. And of course, because you have a 360 camera, if I start zooming out, I can do this tiny planet view as well, where like I'm looking at a pin. And then it and because there was no keyframe, it's going to create this transition through these different perspectives as well. So now you can see that it starts moving into this pin view. Again, it's not something that I use for my type of footage, but you can definitely do that. And the other thing I want to say is, okay, I've shown the movement and these all these different views, but these views are basically just different sort of like zoom levels from the sort of like the 360, where you can see 360 all around between you, to let's say a regular image which looks more like, you know, what you get with a regular camera or phone and action camera. The only thing is you have to keep in mind, which is that obviously there is a limit of the resolution this camera records in 360 and how much that translates into a sort of like a zoomed in image. And I couldn't really figure out what, so as you can see, you see that it shows the zoom level, sort of like, I mean, it's not the zoom level, it's the field of view. So I don't know what is the level, what is the minimum level I should go where the exported footage still looks good in HD. But I think sort of like this 50 and the 60 range is good enough based on my experience. And of course, there are more functions here, because in the edit option, you can create projects, and in those projects you can also create and in those projects you can, you know, put multiple videos together. But I do like the fact that I can just edit each segment, you know, clip the end, set the framing, and whenever I create a project, let's say this one that I'm going to show you later in the video, then I have all my actual footage edited. So all I really need to do is add music. I can add sort of like this opening transition. I can add a bit of text and maybe do additional clipping, but most of the framing is already done in the individual level. And I can again just export this. And there are also some fun things here in this application. So in the explore section and tutorials, I have a couple of creative tricks that I can use to, if I want, the spin. Again, these are sort of like this blogger type of stuff. I don't think there is going to be much translated where I would be able to reuse this, but there are some good examples. And also in edits, there is this flash cut where you can select a template and then say, okay, this looks like a good template. And then it says, I need, these much videos. Okay, this is quite a big one. I need these videos for you to select, and I'm going to, and the app is going to figure out what is the best pieces from these videos in order to create this shot with all the transitions that is already built in and some of the effects. And I think it is actually pretty good. So let me just show you a few examples. If I've just created a couple of these today. So one of them is this. And the funny thing is that for some of these, for some of these examples, I've given the application like a 20-second clip or a 2-minute clip, and it was able to figure out, I mean, it took like a couple of minutes of thinking where it was analyzing all the segments, but at the end, it ended up picking those 1.5 seconds with a specific framing from that video which thought it looks good. I mean, it wasn't really perfect for all the footages, so sometimes I probably have to go back and again add and re-edit this, because this one, I think this looks perfect. This is probably not that good. That one I do like as well. I think this one also looks good, and the same for this and this engine one as well. This one doesn't really show engine, but this is perfect with the smoke and everything, especially with the slow-mo. But if I show you this other one, that is using a different template. But, these are nice shots. A lot of dynamic stuff. It will be so difficult to do all these by hand because of all the small edits. And again, this was probably these two shots, or actually these three as well. This was like each of them were like half a minute long shots. As the train were coming in, I was trying to follow them, and there was also like a lead out. I'm going to show you a couple of clips later on. And again, it was able to pick up these. Maybe this is not the best, but this is really good. The first one was really nice, showing a lot of people and the approaching engine. And yeah, of course, there are some effects as well. But again, the way it picks what looks good in the video is pretty remarkable. So I really like this beginning shot. I think this is really nice, the way it captured it, and also how it sort of framed it from the 360 video, because this was not my framing. This is something all the editor managed to find out how it thought is the best footage. So I think it's pretty good. And there is also like a Windows desktop application, which I have to say I use the phone more, but again, you have a lot more real estate and you pretty much have access to the same functions. Not all the functionalities, but most of the functionalities that you have in the phone app. And again, for me to show that in a full screen video is much easier than the capture from my phone, which is obviously going to be portrait and also occupies only a small part of the screen. But at least you have a feel of both of them, and you can decide which one you would like to use more if you decide to purchase this camera. Okay, so I want to show you some of these editing features, because yeah, I think it is really cool, and then you just have to see it to just understand how easy it is to edit these videos, and then make from this 360 view how you can create the view that you want. So I imported some of the videos, and basically the 360 camera is just connected to my phone over USB, so I can see this as a new device, and I can see all the the videos in here. And I really do like the fact that if you change to like extra large icons, it actually shows you the preview. So these are the preview of all the videos that I have taken. I mean, sometimes it is difficult to tell what is it in the video because of this, if this 360 view, and of course that's the sort of the 360 view of the first frame. But yeah, so, but at least there is something. So anyway, so the first is, let me just take this as an example. So it's nice, it shows you the preview of the video, and as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm holding the camera in my left hand. Of course it doesn't, it's not visible at the moment, and if I start the video, you can see that I'm walking to the logo, and I raise my hand towards the front of the logo and a little bit up in order to capture this view. And by the way, the playback tends to be a little bit choppy because it's doing all the editing and the 360 at the live as you do it. But once you do the final cut, then everything is going to be nice and smooth. So I go back to the beginning of the video. I'm just doing this all with my mouse. So I want to basically just I wanted to have a shot where I move the camera up like this, and I'm just going to capture the front of the logo, and then maybe look a little bit down, look up in the beginning of the shot. So I think that maybe I don't need this first few couple of seconds, so I can bring this in. And what I want to do is I want to add a keyframe, and here in the keyframe you can set up all the basically your shot, what you want. So I want this to be viewed, and I want to zoom in a little bit more. You can edit these numbers as well, the panning and the tilting. And actually what you can also do here is you can also change the roll, which I think it is very easy to do here in the desktop application. I find this a little bit difficult to do it on the phone. But usually you don't have to worry about the roll, because there is a built-in gyro in the camera, so it knows which way is up and down even if you start moving the camera around. That's a really nice feature. But I tend to zoom in, and I can also select these. So this is ultra wide, but I usually select these D-wrap, and that basically just takes off the distortion from sort of the fish islands distortion. Even if you zoom in, there is going to be some distortions at the edges, but it takes it out, and it really makes the final video look like it was actually shot with just with a cell phone or a action cam, or just regular camera. Okay, so that's it. So if I start playing, so now we come to this view. So I want to add another keyframe, and I want to move it sort of like that position. And here, that's another keyframe. And again, I want to frame the logo a little bit more. And the camera moves up. So maybe I can add a keyframe and do it sort of like that. Maybe start looking a little bit down. And that's probably going to be the final shot, which I don't know, maybe I do this. So I move it up here, and if I move the view back, and if I start playing it, that's the end result. And of course the software makes the all these transitions between the keyframes automatic, so you don't have to obviously do every single frame, but you just do like you create these keyframes, and it would just create a transition between them. And to be honest, this is most of the functions that I use all the time. So here you can do some additional things, so like a deep track where you can select something on the footage like a person, and it's going to follow that person. So even if your camera moves around, you waving the stick around, I mean, to a certain extent, it's just going to keep focusing on you. To be honest, I never really do that sort of shots, so I haven't really used that functionality yet. Also, you can do time shift and this sort of like this motion blur if you want to speed up the footage and then create this motion blur. I'm going to show you a little bit later on. It's a bit gimmicky, but yeah, I mean, in some cases you want to use that. It's more like, vlogging people, they want to like cover a big distance in a city and then just create this time warp shot. It looks nice, but I don't think I'm going to use much. So and that's it. That's one of your shots. It's already edited. And so what I can use is I can just do export, full HD video, H.264 format, and I click on export, and just it's going to create an MP4 file for me, which I mean I can put into my editing package if I use the separate editing package, or if I want to this particular just single shot, I can put it on my phone, upload it to social media, that sort of stuff. And the good thing is that what I do in most cases is that sometimes I have some small clips that I want to put on TikTok or Instagram, but that's going to be 16:9. So now I can just start once I export, I can switch the view to 16:9, and let's see if I jump back here. Okay, this looks good. I jump here, that still looks good. Jump here, that's a little bit off, so maybe I'm going to move it. And here again I move it a little bit, so this is better in frame. And the final thing, oops, let me just move this out. Okay, and that's the same. So again, if I go back to the beginning, now it is frame for 16:9, sorry, 9:16. But I already done the keyframes, so it was easy. Sometimes I don't even have to make any changes, just change the format and again export it. And now I have a 16:9 of the same footage. So that's really nice. Let me just jump to the different footage. So that's something I really like this one. So that's something I did where I mounted the camera on the side of this engine. And I kept the door open so you can also see inside the engine. So I've taken a full lap, and if I fast forward, we haven't started yet. Okay, so now it is happening. So there is one thing here is this direction lock, because as I said, since the camera has a gimbal, it always knows which way is up. So if I don't have this direction lock in, then as long as I start turning, the camera will just keep looking at the same place where it was before. But if I keep this direction lock, then it just acts like like a normal camera, where obviously it looks at where you pointed. So that's a really useful feature, and it took me a while to find this functionality. So for this type of shots, I kept just reframing the picture whenever the train was going into a curve. But if you have the direction lock, then it just done, well, again, it's just like any other camera. And probably the only other thing is that maybe what you can do here in this particular shot is that as you turn left, maybe you can just manually pan the camera left, so you're more looking into the direction of the travel, but just something that you can do. And I can show you this time shift as well. So I want to time shift, let's say this period to speed 2, and this motion and these on, then that's how it's going to look like. Again, the preview is very choppy because doing all the transformation live, but once you do the export, then it's going to be like really nice smooth motion. So it creates some sort of like motion blur, which is starting from the beginning, or sorry, from the middle of the frame, and then as soon as you move out, everything is going to be blurred. But yeah, it's good, but again, I don't think I'm going to use this, and we can go back to normal footage. So that's again, this direction lock is a nice feature. And if I want to just show you another, footage, again, it just shows you how I've taken these. So I was riding the loco, and then I had the stick, and now you can go to any place. If I zoom out, then I can create this tiny word picture or view. If I start zooming in, I can get into the details. And again, how much you zoom in is really, it's like, that's really hard to tell, because obviously as soon as you start zooming in, there is only a certain resolution this camera takes. So the whole 360 image is, well, for this particular model is 5.7K. So at some point the picture is going to be blurry, because you are just zooming in way too much. And also it looks like there is like a minimum focal distance that the camera can focus to, so you can't really look at very close objects. So this is why I don't think it's going to be suitable for gauge 1, or especially smaller gauges, unless you really keep this in mind. I don't know where the minimum distance is, whether it's like 10 or 20 centimeters, but you can't really close up to small things. But it's more like an action camera kind of thing. So as long as you have like a decent sort of like arm's length distance, then your footage is going to be the same. So let's say in this case, I would just probably point the camera like this, look forward, and then maybe I can just pan a little bit if I want to see more of the loco. But of course, as I move the camera in and out to avoid, fences and everything, you just have to readjust the frame. So what I ended up doing in these sort of circumstances is I just, keep, maybe I just move 1 second, I add another keyframe, I reframe the image, and I move on. And also, so let's say the other thing I wanted to show you is, let me just remove this keyframe. And I'm just going to fast forward a little bit. So let's say I'm going to add a keyframe like this. Okay, so that's my keyframe, and we are going to move. So that's fine. So I'm going to add another keyframe. So I'm going to just, for this past couple of seconds, I'm going to freeze this frame, because the start and the end frame is the same, the same, roll and pan and everything else. And now I'm just going to move this and then stop again, and I'm going to reframe. Okay, I can probably zoom in a little bit as well. Zoom into the timeline, because what I want to show you is that, okay, so now the camera is sort of like steady, and as soon as I move into the next frame where I start moving the camera, you sort of can notice that it starts moving the view. I haven't really found an option where it can just ease into this movement, so the change is not really noticeable. So what I found is the best way is that sort of like you just keep moving constantly. So even if the frame is almost perfect, when you need to move the framing, you start with a very small movement, so you don't feel the change, so it doesn't become very noticeable. But again, in most cases, what I end up doing is I keep just moving the camera, especially in this case, because I was driving, and then over those obstacles, sometimes I would bring the camera out, I would bring it in more. So there was always, sort of like constant moving of the camera. So here you can see that I don't have this direction lock on. So as we were going into a curve, I just constantly need to readjust the view. So sometimes the direction lock helps, but I think if you are freehanding it, you just have to keep doing this, because obviously the camera doesn't know. I mean, you can do this tracking now. So let me just show you this deep track. Okay. Oh, oops. No. Let's say I want to track, so start tracking. The other thing I noticed that when I do the tracking, okay, it's sort of, I think it's lost the tracking. Maybe what I can do is I can start a tracking on myself. I think it does better tracking on the yeah. So it does that better tracking on persons than on objects. And my issue is that when it's doing person tracking or object tracking or whatever, then it automatically selects a zoom level, which is usually not the framing that I need. So if I do stop tracking, and now I have a piece of the footage that I can, I do track. You see, it goes back to this, and usually it goes back to the view which I don't really like. So yeah, I don't use tracking so much. Oh, go back. Oh, so I can actually change the field of view. So I can move, I can change these, but again, for me, that's not the horizon. The horizon is lower on, and then it creates so much of these. Yeah, that's not the shot that I want. That is not the framing that I want. I want the deep tracking, but I want a different framing. So in most cases, I end up deleting this deep tracking, and I just create the tracking myself. So yeah, that's it. But again, it works. It's great. And so you can do all these settings for each of your videos, but then you can also go to the project view. So in this project view, this is where you can actually start putting multiple recordings together. So, and the good thing is that you can see that I have already edited this footage. So when I insert it, it already imports the edited version with all the the trimming and all the keyframes and everything. So what I usually do is I use in the media mode, and actually that works the same way in the mobile application as well. So I do it in the media mode, and then I go to the project and I just put the videos together, and I can add music, I can add text, and I can add transitions. So it has all the basic features of a video editing package, and then it just works great. So if I add this one now, oops, I think I have edited before yeah, I edited it before, but now I haven't edited this yet. So this is like a a 360. Well, it's not a 360, but that's clearly not edited yet. But now I can, it has a lot of built-in music, so I can, download the music. I can, have my favorites, so I can upload my music as well. And I've found that I've created a couple of examples where I've added music from this library as well. And interestingly, YouTube and Instagram had no issues with these background videos, but TikTok had an issue, and they said it needs to be replaced because it's copyright match. And you can add some text, and they have this funky text as well. So I've used some of these in the videos. I mean, some of them are cheesy, but yeah, you can place this text. Oops. Yeah, and of course, oops, the text has some transitions built in, but you can define all these. I mean, of course, you can change the text, but it has the transitions, how the these three lines move in and fade out. So it is really easy to use them because it says test one live. Okay, well, let's leave it for the default. You see, it does all the thing. So you can just make it. I mean, the only thing you can do, you can make it longer. So the transition in and out is going to be longer. You can reposition it. You can change the size and everything. But again, it makes it really easy to use these building templates. Well, you are restricted to these templates, but I think they are good enough. Sometimes they just have some simple ones which fade in and fade out. So I was always able to find something that I could use. And you also have sometimes these that you can just use as stickers. And yeah, I mean, generally a good piece of functionality, I think. And once you have the recording and then you have the export, then yeah, you can just export it to an MP4 and of course you have the different aspect ratios here as well. I mean, for me, the sources are 16:9, but I can do 9:16 as well. So I can change the export format here as well. But of course, in some cases, you might just need to rearrange your texts. If you put them into the upper left here, then maybe you are just going to be off screen when you change the aspect ratio. But again, once you have the general editing done, it's very easy to create a portrait and a landscape format of the same footage. So let me show you this video that I did I just went to the station at the end of the day. This train was waiting to depart. It was like a late afternoon, so you can see the camera in the on the side of the engine, and I just created these sort of like 6 shots, and I started editing this on my phone. And actually, the music also came from the app, and this is the shot that I'm going to use a little bit later on to show you in the recordings. And yeah, I added these gimmicks as well, like these text animations. And I really like that I was able to just walk next to the engine. Probably you can tell that I was walking and there is this sort of like this up and down motion in the video, which obviously as I was walking, that's something that I couldn't get rid of by trying to hold the camera still, or even the gyro was not able to hold. So here, obviously, whenever I was doing these panning shots, I did not, like spin the camera. I was just holding and doing all the editing later on. I was just basically just walking along the engine, and the only thing I was paying attention to is sort of what level that I'm holding the camera, because obviously I can change the angle in post-production, but I can change the position. And again, that was just another one where I was just swinging the camera up to this emblem, and yeah, I was walking past again, and I think that was the point when actually oh yeah, you can see my hand there. So this was the point when actually the engine started running, so I stopped the audio. Actually, I think the audio is sort of like this long, and it stopped at this point. So I was doing another swooping shot. You can sort of see as I was walking, but it's not really noticeable. It's maybe it's not the smoothest video playback because I'm doing the recording and the playback at the same time, but it worked really nice. And here I was just standing, and I wanted to take a shot of how the engine was leaving. And let me just fast forward. Yeah. And as the train was leaving and the carriages was clanking on the joints, I added this animation as well. So I uploaded this video to Facebook, and I thought I'm just going to push it onto TikTok and Instagram as well. So I just quickly going back to the same project, and I changed the aspect ratio, and I made a very few amount of changes, like reframing some of the shots. But from the same footage, this is the portrait version that I've created, with probably like another 10 minutes of effort. Sometimes you can see my feet, the framing is obviously a little bit different, but I think it ended up being pretty much the same shot. I even included the same video animations overlay, and yeah, I'm really happy the way it turned out. I think this ended up being a very nice video as well. You can see me there. Yeah, that was really fun. But again, you can see how much different it makes to the different shot. In some cases, I mean, maybe this particular shot looks better in portrait, but then in other cases, sorry, landscape, but in other cases, portrait looks better. But yeah, and yeah, you don't see too much here. There is way too much sky and ground and the trees, but that's the way how the portrait looks like. And then as the train leaves, yeah, that's the two clanks, and then the video fades out. And it's one more example. Basically, I was just walking in front of the engine, sort of like trying to keep you know, the same pace with the locomotive. Sometimes the locomotive would speed up and I would use this opportunity, so I cannot catch up with the loco, so I would use this opportunity to sort of like pan the view and then look the other way and then see as it moves, and I would stop walking. You probably can tell because the footage was not shaking that much. But I think these are ended up really good shots as well, and I'm really happy how they turned out. And again, I was like, probably you can tell I was sort of like at the sort of the middle of the engine. I mean, the camera was there, so I was using this very long boom, and I was just pointing the camera down and just walking past to it, not really paying attention to you know, where the camera is or which way the camera is facing. I was sort of like trying to keep the same height, obviously look ahead so I don't, you know, run into obstacles, and also not to get too close to the engine because that would create a lot of distortion. But that's it. I think it ended up as a really good footage. And to be honest, I think you can probably see that if you would try to do something with even with an action camera or with a handheld camera, it would be really difficult, because especially sort of like these following and panning shots, it would be impossible to track it and also frame it at the same time. So you just have less thing to worry about when you are creating these shots. And maybe this is one example when I was getting too close to the engine. So maybe the beginning of the shot is nice. You can see, you know, some of the distortion, but as the engine was going faster than me, so this is obviously the place where you can sort of like see the distortion. And I think there is also like a sometimes you see a line there, which is the center of the camera. But again, this ended up being a really decent shot as I was walking past. But again, since I was really close to the engine, you can see my steps and the fact that I cannot just hold the camera very still, especially at the end of the boom, because you are really trying to hold your hand still. But at the end of the boom, that very small motion gets exaggerated. And also I have this very fun recording where I was driving with the family and I was like holding the camera. So I held the camera, you know, wide out when I had a chance, and there was no trees and nothing like that. And of course, as I was, I think there was here, yeah, bushes here, so I had to bring it in. But I use this opportunity to look forward so I don't see too much of the engine because it's really too close, and then it gets distorted. And then we had to stop at the red signals. Again, I was using the opportunity to pan the camera. I could have edited this part out, but it's like I said, okay, let's use this footage to look back, and then we can see us. And you can see how, you know, small the camera moves up and down because I was holding it in my hand, just in the boom, just straight out, trying to hold it still. And I think after a couple of seconds, yeah, I was panning back as the signal was turning yellow, and we can start. I can just let me just fast forward. So and also here I was, okay, there was some, you know, fences and signals here, and I started going out again. It's nice to see us and the engine from a little distance, and then there was a signal here, so I was coming in. I was able to go a little bit more out here, and I think at some point I tried this sort of barrel roll transition. Maybe not here. Yeah. So it's so much fun editing like this. I really like the perspective. I mean, as I said, there's no way I could have done the same with a handheld, you know, just normal point and shoot camera, whether it's like a professional camera or an action cam, because there's no way that you can frame it that much. You can't just sort of like rotate the camera at the end of the boom. So let me just forward. Yeah, I was doing. I wanted to have a shot where I think at some point, oops, yeah, I trimmed the bushes, but at some point I was just moving the camera onto the other side, and I was able to edit that out quite well as well. So this was the camera was sort of high up, and I was bringing it down as we were rolling into this tunnel. Probably the only thing I would say is that how the camera behaves when the light condition changes rapidly is probably it's a little bit slow. I mean, my GoPro acts a little bit faster. I like that action a little bit better, but I mean, it was definitely a challenging environment going into the tunnel and coming out of the tunnel. But I think these are very usable shots. I mean, it's not something that I could do in the past with some of my other gear. I think we had to stop here because there were some trains piling up for the station. Yeah, and that's where the video ended. Yeah, and this was a different lap, and just wanted to show you that I just took the boom, put it to my other hand, and I managed to do this with I think with a fairly decent transitions at the end. And in these shots, when I edited these out, I was using the ultra-wide mode. So maybe I'm thinking that maybe in some of these, I'm just going to go back into the editor package and then change this to the deform, because then I can get, especially when I get too close to subjects, they tend to warp, and maybe I can edit out by using the dewarping option. And I haven't really seen any negative impact of that, so pixels or anything like that. So the app seems to, or the camera and the app, the way it edits the final package seems to be really, really good quality. Even though I guess if it wants to de-warp at the sort of the edges of the image, maybe it needs to use probably more pixels. I mean, like, every some of the pixels out, because obviously in that distance it doesn't have so much resolution. But in general, when you look at the footage, it looks, pretty good. Maybe not as sharp if you would, I mean, it's definitely not a 4K resolution. For that, probably you need a newer model which records the 360 footage in 8K. But yeah, I think for a full HD resolution, it is pretty nice. And again, it's dealing with these shadows fairly decently, so none of the picture is really underexposed or overexposed. Even though this is not HDR recording, so maybe it gets a little bit. Yeah, it was a little bit dark before, and then it got a little bit too light, so maybe it could respond to changes a little bit quicker, but yeah, that's the way it is. Now it's a little bit overexposed again, but not terribly. It was a really bright day, and especially here the shades and the sunny areas change a lot. And here I was just playing up and just moving the boom up and down, trying to avoid obstacles and people and fences and line side objects and everything. Yeah, here pretty much everything gets overexposed, but then it sort of like recovers within a second or 1.5 seconds. So thanks for sticking around for my 360 video. So that was all for today. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one.